Musket Great Axe build video. Chances are, if you guys are watching this, you already enjoy playing some builds off the beaten path, or maybe this is just you checking out what else is out there outside of the more meta specs that you see. I love trying different builds, and honestly, when I put this guy together, I didn't have the highest expectations. I was thinking the intelligence musket would be kind of a letdown, but oh my god, was I wrong. The synergy with the grenade, the trap, and then reap into execute was absolutely incredible. So many people fell for it. I don't even know what to say. Maybe they don't know that it's coming, or once they step in it, it's already too late for them. Either way, not only did this build have way more firepower and burst than I thought it would, but the defensive utility of it was actually really good. Great Axe has got a lot of mobility offensively and defensively, and then of course Musket with the trap, the bombs, and the movement speed made it really easy to survive and zone players out on a build like this too. Of course, there is a breakdown of the build at the end of the video and a written guide on my website, pvpnewworld.com, a link to that below. And let's get into that PvP commentary. I've got a few fights for you guys on this build. Starting off with this one here, just hanging out inside the middle outpost. I get a great trap combo on that player there, and there is the execute as he tries to slide off the edge. So much damage. And again, man, just kind of catching these guys by surprise with the burst. And here I have the 3 players on my tail. Again, I just throw the trap down. One of the players actually squirreled off the other direction because I believe the grenade did connect on him. And that often encourages players to back up a little bit. And we connect a beautiful combo on this guy. Again, he steps in that trap and he takes a ton of damage. And then the mace player starts charging towards me here. I get a fantastic combo with the grenade into the reap. And there's the execute, and he's got a ton of heals coming in on him. And unfortunately, I'm unable to seal the kill on the third player. But yeah, I like that opening sequence because right away you guys can see there is definitely not a lack of damage on a build like this. And the combinations are no joke at all. And here I drop down the side and I make some pretty critical errors, I believe. Number one, I don't think I should have hugged this side as long as I did because I'm getting surrounded very quickly by the enemy players. But because I'm playing Musket Great Axe, I feel like I have a decent amount of safety with the gap closer coming up. And here is the big error that I make. Gap close into the side of a rock and these guys get the kill. But I definitely wanted to highlight that because, well, if I had made the right move, I probably would have been able to survive and get out of that safely. Moving on to the next fight here, as you guys can see, 2 enemy players, 1 archer player shooting at me. He starts to go for his rapier goodness, and then I get him with some nasty damage on the reap, and he decides to go offensive. I throw down the execute right away. A bit of overkill, but it does manage to get the kill. And then this guy here is trying to run back to base. He runs in a straight line, and there you see it. 2 musket shots and 1 grenade. He goes from 100 to 0. Absolutely beautiful burst damage. Surprisingly good damage for an intelligence-based musket build that is running 150 con. Yeah, I'll be honest. I definitely get surprised with the burst on a build like this. And these 2 guys, they start coming towards me. The Void Gauntlet player starts throwing down his stuff. I know he's going to go for that scream. I roll behind him. He screams the wrong way, and I get a huge combo off on him. Unfortunately, the heals come down just in time, and he manages to escape with his life. And then I pop my ultimate right here for the healing power. Depending on what ultimate you want to use, you got a lot of options in this game. But I, of course, really like to use the stone form for solo PvP, especially for those situations. Just ensure that I can not only survive getting out of a sticky spot, but have a bit of hit points left once I finally get to cover. And this guy here, I love it. I throw the trap on the ground, or the grenade, sorry. And the grenade is actually kind of hard for people to see. If they didn't see where it landed, just like that guy didn't, he ends up stepping on it and I get some decent damage. There I throw another grenade down, and the zoning from that grenade, again, just putting that damage in will discourage players from chasing you as hard. And then here I find myself in kind of a nasty spot. The enemy player very low on health. I try to get him with that last shot. Unfortunately, he's getting healed up. And I keep backing up. Managed to land a nice connection on the grenade on that guy. And I hit him with the powder burn as well. That would have been enough to kill him at the hit points he was at. So either he got a heal or he popped his potion in time. But I do successfully manage to escape, and I come back towards where I was fighting here, and I see just 1 enemy player left. I don't think he was even one of the guys chasing me. He gasses his stamina trying to escape. Oh my gosh, Bloodlust on the Great Axe into that execute. And then I move up the battlefield a little bit here as some friendlies show up, and I start trying to shoot at the back line. Yeah, there's the spear coming from this spear player, trying to get that hook to pull me in. Good thing we got Great Axe, so if we do get pulled in, we've got the grit and long distance gap closer to try to make that escape. And then this archer, he jumps down. I do actually connect the shot there. It just didn't register the damage visually. And he gasses his stamina. One heavy attack into the execute, and down he goes. You cannot run out of stamina if you are at half health against a build like this. They will kill you if that execute is ready. And now moving on to the next clip here, hanging out in the enemy OPR, this Great Axe Firestaff player jumps on top of me. Now this is a very common build we see a lot of in the game right now, and I just do some trading with him. I managed to connect a nice heavy attack on him there, and he gasses his stam. I go for the execute. He does a great job countering with his incinerate. And there, I go for my ultimate, and he goes for his. I roll through so I don't get hit by the explosion, and the heal up is really good for me too. And the second enemy player comes in. I take a lot of damage from their initial combo. Go for the gap closer to get to the other side, and honestly, I got a nice timing on that roll. That cripple probably would have killed me if I had eaten it. And then this guy steps in my first trap. He keeps following. He doesn't see the second one. Oh my god, the grenade goes off. The execute to break his block. Holy crap, man. I just love it. Great Axe not only hits hard, but that stamina damage, you can just cut through people's shields with it, especially if they're not in heavy armor with that tower shield. And now the Great Axe player's left. He makes the mistake of stepping in that trap, and I've said it in the beginning of the video. I'll say it again. Once they step in the trap, it is often too late. Big damage on that execute, and down he goes. Moving on to the next fight here, I've got a couple enemy players chasing me around the outside of the outpost here. I try to throw the grenade to connect, but I don't. And right away, I just run towards my grenade and stand behind it. Again, even if you don't land that grenade, you can use it as an excellent control tool for the battlefield. And they head towards me, and I land a double trap, one on each player. Yeah, pretty happy about that. I practice that trap throw a lot, and if you guys play any musket with the trap, I would highly recommend practicing throwing that trap, because you can catch people with it at a distance like that. And this guy here, he didn't have a healer, and he didn't have anything to heal up with in time, so I'm able to pick him off with just a couple musket shots. And the other enemy player ends up chasing our healer away there. And again, I'm just going to play that game with this guy. I know I have traps on the ground, the grenade as well. And he ends up walking right into it. 6.7k execute, no crit. And then the gap closer to finish him off. And this last guy ends up just squirreling away. So, to start off the video, I picked a nice scenic location to do this build video for you guys. Now, let's take a look at the attribute points. Right away, you guys can see my attributes are all over the place. I wanted to show you guys the version of this build that I actually played on the live server. I did have the option to go on the PTR and put together a fully min-maxed version. However, I wanted to show you guys the crappy version that I was playing, just to kind of show you that you don't need to have a perfectly min-max build to try new things in PvP, and you don't need to have a perfectly min-max build to be very successful in PvP. So, without further ado, let's take a look at this. 25 strength, 25 focus. This is a big result from some of the gear that I have on that gives me strength and focus. For this build, I would actually recommend keeping the 25 focus for the ability cooldown reduction, but not going for the 25 strength. The light attack damage is kind of nice for the musket, however, we don't really get anything on the Great Axe for this because it is scaling from intelligence. 50 dexterity. You have two options with this build, 50 dex or 100 dex, but I would recommend at least 50 for a build like this. 100 dex is not a terrible option at all. If you have more attribute points or a little bit better stat spread than I do, you can definitely get 350 intel and 100 dex with a build like this. And that additional damage you get while the stamina is not full will actually increase your Great Axe damage versus putting points into intel past this point. So if you can get the 100 dex, I would recommend it. And then, of course, intelligence, you want to have all of the points that you can in it. You want to have 350 plus intel, especially for the musket. The fact that the musket's weapon damage is a little bit on the low side because we're stacking intel is heavily made up for by the fact that the intel tree gives you so much more additional damage. And then, of course, 150 constitution. This build, especially running grenade and trap, I would recommend 150 constitution because you're going to be doing a lot of melee fighting. You could always go squishier or more durable if you want. It's kind of up to the user, and you have quite a bit of flexibility with this one simply because most of our points are just going into intel anyway. Now, taking a look at the mastery for this build, starting off with the musket, I am playing what I would like to call a low damage musket kit. So if you're not playing a super glassy musket build, I feel like this is the one that still has great damage and retains a lot of utility at the same time. Now, the first one we have is Powder Burn. This is fantastic not only for that initial hit, but that really powerful burn that it applies. You have options between Powder Burn and Power Shot as kind of your first slot skill. I would say these two are probably your best bet. but you could feel free to run any skill that you want here. Next up, we've got the Sticky Bomb. This deals a ton of damage. Even on an Intelligence Musket, this hits very hard, and comboing it with the Great Axe skills, oh my god, absolutely beautiful. And I think too that because this build runs a lot more melee or close range focused musket setup, having Sticky Bomb plus the trap gives you a much better ability to actually control the battlefield with your immobilizes and just the damage and AoE that the Sticky Bomb will throw out. And then of course we've got traps. There are two big reasons why I like traps on this build. Number one, the immobilize and the follow-up damage if someone steps in it. So much pressure from the traps, and it basically is a death sentence if they're low on stamina and their health is not full and they stand in that trap. Second of all, I'm running the accelerating trap on the musket, so that movement speed is massive for this build's getaway capabilities. It just allows you to survive things that without that 35% movement bonus, you honestly couldn't get away from. And then let's take a look at the Great Axe kit. The Great Axe kit, I actually opted to go as much damage as possible instead of utility. You could definitely run any kit you want with a build like this, but hear me out why I think Reap and Execute are probably your best choices versus the other skills that you have access to. If you catch someone in the trap and there's a grenade on them, the Reap can ensure that you land that grenade explosion by catching them in that stagger. They can't roll out of it if you time it correctly, and a lot of people are good at timing that grenade explosion, so you will catch people off guard when you hit them with the Reap before the explosion goes off. And then the Execute. Again, if someone steps in that trap and they're immobilized, they blow their stam really fast, and if they're at half health or lower, this is an incredibly deadly skill to hit people with. Not to mention, the Mending Execute perk that I would prefer to run on the Great Axe if I could, will heal you for a ton of the outgoing damage that Execute does. So even if you're not using it to finish an opponent, the utility from that heal is definitely not something that I'm overlooking. And then, of course, we've got Charge for that gap closer. This is the Great Axe skill that you probably definitely want for PvP. Gap closers are huge for attacking, defending, and the fact that this one has grit and goes a very long distance and has no wind-up time makes it one of the best gap closers in the game. Okay, so let's take a look at my gear, and you guys will notice it is not too terribly min-maxed here. So starting off with the Great Axe, we've got the Abyss, everything unlocked except the final perk. I would like to run Mending Execute here. Crippling Reap is also a really good option. It's kind of up to the user what you want to go with, but I like the heal from Execute, so that's why I think I would personally want to go that route, because it can just turn around a really bad situation if you do land it. In short though, next patch you also have the option of running any other Great Axe with an Intelligence Gem. I still think Abyss is going to be the way to go, even without that 15% additional damage, because we don't have a way to drain our mana. It still should hit harder than an Intelligence-based Great Axe that's only getting 90% scaling. Now, moving on to the Musket. We've got the Syncretic Musket. You guys have seen this on so many different builds. This is basically the easiest to get / most powerful musket combo of those two in the game. So we've got Arboreal Attunement, Accelerating Traps, and Keenly Jagged. Accelerating Traps my perk of choice because, of course, that movement speed bonus when you throw the trap down and do your dodge roll, 43% haste. Nothing can really catch you when you're that fast, not even a Great Axe player with Bloodlust. So very, very nice for the getaway and the utility that it gives to trap. Not to mention the bleed that it applies can give you a little bit more pressure when someone does step in your trap. You could always go for something like Crippling Powder Burn here if you want, but just note that if you do drop the traps, you give up a lot of survivability by doing so. And then for the gem on the musket, I've gone with Augmented Abyssal. We're going to deal the void damage per second, and 40% of the damage is changed to void damage. Now, this is obviously the way to go because we are running the Abyss, and if I was living in an ideal world, I would have full Abyssal damage increase on my Rune Glass gems, as well as maybe some Abyssal damage increase perks on my armor too. But I don't live in a perfect world, so here is what I was running while I was playing this build. Number one, I've got the Solemn Crown. Shirking Heals, Refreshing, and Health. Shirking Heals took a pretty nasty nerf recently, but I still feel like having additional healing power in PvP is very useful. If you don't want to run Shirking Heals, you could run something like Ellie or Physical Aversion instead, or even the Enchanted Ward, because that is going to be quite useful against a majority of incoming damage types in PvP too. And when we look down here, you can see I've got Physical Aversion, Mending Execute on the chest piece. Again, that Mending Execute would be a 60% heal if I had it on the Great Axe, so that's where I would rather have it. We've got more Shirking Heals, Ellie Aversion, and Health. I'll say this about Health. I don't think it's as good as everybody touts it to be. I don't run Health myself, and I have a lot of success in PvP. I think I only have Health on these gloves. So, yeah. I would prefer to take something like Shirking Heels over Health, for example, if I had the choice. And then for the legs, you definitely want to have Shirking Energy. Freedom is not a bad option either, but since I'm running the Stoneform Ultimate, I can get away without running Freedom on a build like this. And then for the boots, we've got the Tumbler Boots, Refreshing Physical Aversion, and Shirking Heels. I would still recommend Shirking Heels on Tumbler Boots if you're playing a PvP build with them, simply because that is more additional healing power on top. The Tumbler Boots themselves are very good. I still think this is one of, if not the best, light armor artifact piece that you can wear. I know a lot of people like to run Featherweight, but honestly, if you have the Fortify up from the Tumbler Boots, you are mitigating more damage than Featherweight will mitigate for you. And you also get the heal, and you get the empower. Yeah, you just have to be dodging attacks. The Featherweight is maybe a better option if you're getting hit maybe while your guard is down or something like that. Again, it's up to the user, but I will always be Team Tumbler Boots, at least with how they function right now. Now, taking a look at the jewelry, I've got the Cleansing Pod, Strength and Focus. This is why my stats are so weird, and the reason I went with the Cleansing Pod is because it has Shirking Dot Cleanse and Stamina Recovery on it, and this is the only piece of jewelry or necklace that I could get on my Iron Man that has these two perks. In my opinion, these are the best perks you can run in PvP right now. Stamina Recovery for that Stamina Recovery, obviously. The more stam you have, the more you can roll, the more you can keep yourself alive. Second, Shirking Dot Cleanse. Dots are so strong right now. You get hit by a powerful bow dot and it can tick you for like 800 damage a tick from a glass cannon bow player. So having the Dot Cleanse makes a huge difference in cutting the incoming amount of damage that you take over the course of a fight. Ideally, I would actually like to run Vigor on this build as well. 4 times Vigor, in fact, to have that huge damage over time reduction, but this is just me being a solo player finding that damage over time is really the killer for me this patch because it just wears me down and long term I can't keep fighting just because it's so much pressure. So yeah, Refreshing as the final perk. I want to run 4 out of 4 Refreshing on this build. Just like most PvP builds, you do want to run that. However, I would prefer to have that 15% thrust damage resist here if I could get my hands on it. Moving on to the ring, the Azoth Crystal Ring. This is basically perfect for the build. We've got Leeching Hardy and Keen Awareness. You could swap out Keen Awareness for Void Damage Increase. It's up to you, but Leeching and Hardy are definitely the two that I would recommend for PvP right now, especially since you need all the healing power you can get in today's meta. Yeah, Leeching is very important in my opinion. And then for the earring, I've got the Life Loop. Healthy Toast, Refreshing Toast, and I would like to have Regenerating instead of Refreshing here, but again, Iron Man limitations, so I get what I get. Now, I did mention this earlier, but I am running the Stoneform Heart Rune. Just allows you to get away without running Freedom. The stun break that it gives is incredibly valuable, plus the amount of healing power can just help you get out of some really sticky situations. And as always, you want to run the best consumables that you can, and make sure that you use some buff food as well as a Honing Stone. And that's the build, guys. Again, the Abyss Great Axe, just unlocking so many cool playstyles that we weren't able to explore before. Next patch, we're going to see those gem changes, and literally every build is open. So yeah, I was pumped for this patch just because of those artifact weapons. Next patch is going to be an entirely new thing for me. Again, if you want to check out a written guide to this build and so many more, you can find it on my website, pvpnewworld.com. There's a link to my Twitch down below if you guys want to catch a live stream or two from me. And of course, if you have an awesome clip you want to see in the New World Top 5, you can send that to Kristofer at pvpnewworld.com. A thank you to our sponsor, ExpressVPN. They can keep you safe on the internet, and there's a link down below if you guys want to get a deal with them. And of course, a massive thank you to all of my patrons on Patreon for supporting the show. Thank you guys so much just for tuning in and watching as well. Hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope to see y'all next time. Have a good night, everybody.